Welcome to the Mental Health Boot Camp podcast. You guys got to say something.
Hello.
Hello.
This is the podcast where 3 Canadians and 1 American, all of us psychotherapists, serve you cutting-edge mental health knowledge. I am Ryan Howes, a psychologist from Pasadena, California.
Hi, I'm Brooke Lewis from Vancouver, Canada.
Hello, I'm Chris Boyd from Vancouver, Canada.
And I am Joanna Boyd from Vancouver, Canada, and Chris's lovely sister.
Lovely sister, that's right. In fact, we're all a little more lovely tonight because we're wearing some Christmas stuff, right? A little holiday garb.
True.
A little bit.
So, Ryan, can you describe the garment that you are wearing and where you acquired it from? That gets better and better. You got to stand up for us. Whoa!
That is a gem.
This is a genuine ugly Christmas sweater from a thrift store. I purchased it probably 14, 15 years ago. And we were going to we're going to a Christmas party, something like that, and went and shopped at a thrift store and found this little number, which has got all sorts of gingerbread men and women on here. It's got a little bows kind of sewn onto it. I believe there's some jingle bells at the bottom. Lollipops. Yeah, it's got the whole thing.
Can you touch those snowballs? Are they like 3D
these?
snowballs? Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Easy, Joe. Easy. I
They
love
are.
the candy cane connection as well. They're all
Yes.
holding the candy cane there.
Yeah, holding candy canes, kind of in a little rope. Yeah, it's a real winner. There's no doubt about it. So even though it isn't even Thanksgiving yet here in the States, and it's way past Thanksgiving for you guys in Canada, a lot of people are getting into the holiday spirit and putting out their decorations for the holidays, putting out their menorahs, putting out their Christmas lights, all sorts of different things. So there's actually, I got to be part of an article in Huffington Post where they were asking psychologists, is it okay? Is it all right for people to start celebrating the holidays early this year? And everyone's sentiment was, oh yeah, you betcha. You bet. You want something fun, you want to bring a little joy, have something to look forward to instead of something to dread? Absolutely.
Yeah, I think we could all use a bit of an extended Christmas season in 2020.
Bring on the holidays. But Chris, I wear this Christmas sweater also because I would like to do a little plugging for you. Now, you have a special tie with Christmas sweaters, don't you? Can you talk about your history there?
Yeah, so many years ago, I think it was 18, 19 years ago, maybe less, losing track of time here. But my friend Jordan Birch and I are credited with starting the very first original ugly Christmas sweater party. So at the time I worked at a retirement home, and his aunt used to wear these festive sweaters. So the sweaters were around, of course, but we coined the term ugly and decided to wear them at a Christmas party and became the focal point of a kind of a tradition that sprouted out of Vancouver here. So it grew really quickly, and we spent many, many years, 14, 15 years at the Commodore Ballroom, which is a big live music venue in downtown Vancouver that fits 1,000 people, and raised a bunch of money for charity. And we also had a dash, a family-friendly 5K dash we added to the mix, and had Ugly Christmas Sweater Day, which was proclaimed official in the city of Vancouver in the province of BC. So our latest project is actually a book, a children's book, called The Ugly Christmas Sweater Rebellion. So we just launched it a couple of weeks ago. And if you're interested in getting a copy, it's uglychristmassweaterbook.com.
Is it available on places like Amazon and Barnes & Noble and any Canadian equivalents?
Yeah, so Amazon would be the softcover book or paperback book.
Okay.
And then the hardcover is mainly through our website and then retail locations up here in Canada. So a bit of a softer launch this year. but we'll hopefully expand next year.
Ugly Christmas Sweater Rebellion is the name of the book. Can you give us just a little taste of the plot and like what kind of age range it might be appropriate for?
Sure. So discover how a simple and silly holiday tradition can weave connection between generations, reminding people young and old of what truly matters during the festive season. Full of spirit and heart, this warm and fuzzy story inspires more kindness, connection, and generosity in all of us. Right off the back of the book here. So made it easy for me here.
Very nice.
And yeah, for age range, like, to be honest, like, we're hoping the young kids, their parents can read the story to them, but we have, we have nieces and nephews, and lots of younger kids are reading it themselves and reading the story to their families. So
great.
Seems like the story's resonating and they're enjoying the pictures. The illustrations are actually done by Adam Ruckert, who is he's probably illustrated about 70 books, sorry. And he's from Utah.
All right.
He's a great illustrator. We're very fortunate to be teamed up with him. So
that's awesome.
And each book sold.
What's that? Sorry?
With each book sold, there's a meal that goes to a child in need. So that kind of continues the giving spirit that really the Ugly Sweater gatherings and Dash and has been about, is giving back. So Chris and Jordan kind of continued that tradition, which is pretty wicked. So
yeah,
pretty wicked.
But thank you for the opportunity to plug the children's book.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you for starting a tradition. And by the way, did you had when you would raise money at your parties, that money would go to, was it like Make-A-Wish, or who were you giving that money to?
Yeah, so various charities over the years, but lately it was Make-A-Wish Foundation. It was our last obviously no party this year.
Yeah.
We're getting a little older too, so hoping to pass it on eventually to maybe Make-A-Wish to organize it for us. So
fantastic. Well, way to go.
Thank
Ugly
you.
Christmas Sweater Rebellion. Everywhere you buy books. All right. Let's we have our own little tradition on this show, which we call the ambush. And the ambush is where one of us knows what the topic is, and the other three of us open it up like a holiday surprise. Woo! What's it going to be this time around? And Santa Claus for today is Brooke, right?
Yeah. We'll have to see if it's a present or some coal in your stocking. What type of ambush is this going to be today?
We have no idea.
I eagerly
Sleep
await.
hygiene part 3.
even sleepier, right? Well, I look forward to it, Brooke. Let's
You want me to send it?
Send it across the border. I'm ready.
You ready? I'm
Yep.
going to send it.
Ugh, got it. Okay.
You must have T-Mobile.
Yeah, no, I don't. All right. Here we go. Okay, this is an interesting topic. Kind of close to all of our hearts in some ways, right? What makes good therapy? How do you know when it's time to say goodbye and end therapy? Okay, it's a therapy question day. That's a present. I'd consider that a present.
And termination, Ryan, wasn't that up your wheelhouse, or you gave us a spiel on that a few years ago?
I did give a talk on termination. Well, are you just saying you want the night off and you want me to do the talking?
No. Just pointing that out. Keep our listeners waiting for all your tidbits.
I'm thinking that, like, I don't know if it's happening down in the States or in California, but up here, there's a lot more encouragement towards counseling and therapy. There's a lot more awareness. The stigma, we're working on reducing it. It's not gone, but it's definitely being reduced. And for any people who have maybe been thinking about therapy, but they're a little hesitant, or maybe we could just discuss what good therapy might look like, or what to look for, what bad therapy, how do you know when to leave that? How do you know as a client to say maybe this isn't a good fit? and try someone else? And as a therapist, when do we say, hey, you know what, I think we're good here, and let's shelf this or end this, and what does that look like?
Yeah, no, great topic. Because there are a lot of misconceptions about therapy, right?
Yes.
And for instance, that therapy is the same. Every therapist has that same way of doing things.
Mm-hmm.
So we often hear that, oh, therapy doesn't work for me. And then you delve into it and you find out that they've had maybe 1 or 2 counseling sessions.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, it didn't quite benefit them, right?
True.
That's one thing I like to say when I meet people for the first time. At the end, I just make note how overwhelming it can be to even find a therapist. And I want to make note that, if you feel like, you and I jibe well, or that you'd like to come back and talk to me, great, but no pressure, because there are so many therapists out there, and it might take, 1 or 2 tries to find someone that you feel comfortable with. And if you don't feel comfortable, that's okay. And I think that's what people need to hear more, is that the first person you might go talk to, if you don't feel like you can build a good rapport or relationship, to not be scared off and never try it again, but to recognize there's so many of us out there, and to just, keep an open mind about that, at least not give up. Yeah.
Be patient with it. Yeah, absolutely.
So, boy, there's so much to say here, Brooke. So much to go into.
We'll have to do a part 2 sometime.
Might have to do a part 2.
Add it to the list, Joanna.
There we go. I'm gonna plug my own stuff here for a second here, which is that for about 12 years I've written a blog for Psychology Today called In Therapy, which is all about questions like this: how does therapy work? How do we know it's working well? What do you do if this comes up in therapy? What do you do if that comes up? These sorts of issues, and so you can look that up. And I'll try to summarize 12 years of work here into a couple minutes. No, I'm kidding. No, you guys are absolutely right. In fact, the most important thing, the biggest predictor of successful therapy is the goodness of fit, is the relationship between the client and the therapist. A lot of times people serve up this idea that, oh, I need XYZ therapy, or a certain type of therapy, and then I'll be fine. When really the research supports more the idea that honestly the type of therapy is not as important as how well you can communicate with your therapist, how well the two of you jibe with one another. And so I know that the question that you're asking is, how do you know you have good therapy or bad therapy? That's really all kind of depends on you. You're a good friend of yours could see a therapist and they have a wonderful working relationship and it all is fine. You could go to that same therapist and it just doesn't work out because for whatever reason, any of a number of reasons, you don't feel comfortable enough to open up and talk. You kind of feel you're guarded or something like that. I mean, things that therapists oftentimes will talk about as we're advertising our services is, I have so many years of experience and I have all these different trainings and I have written all these books and all these things. And that's great. But if you go and sit down with that person and you don't feel comfortable enough to open up and say, here's what I'm really dealing with, then you're really not going to benefit much from that therapy. It might be someone who just graduated or hasn't even graduated yet. They're getting their training still. And you feel like you can sit there and you can feel comfortable enough to just talk with them. That's probably going to be the better therapy for you.
For sure. And to provide a bit of context, so Scott Miller, he was participating in that conference that we all actually met at, the Psychotherapy Networker Symposium, and him and his buddy Barry Duncan, they kind of sat down and hashed it out because they realized we're so technique focused, right? And they realized that can be helpful for some, but not helpful for others. So they wrote an article called Losing Faith, and where they talked about the dodo bird verdict. So they referenced a meta-analysis by this guy named Bruce Wampold and realized that all of our therapeutic techniques work equally as well. And there's these other factors that lead to success in therapy, like the therapeutic relationship, which Ryan talked about, but also client characteristics is a huge part of it. So what they're bringing to the table. And that's, so I interpret that as trying to find the best fit based on what they're bringing to the table. So maybe approaching it in more of an eclectic way. So we have all these great theories and approaches. So trying to find the best approach for them. And then expectancy. So almost a placebo effect that the treatment is a good fit for you and it's going to create some good positive change in your life.
You're saying if the client believes that it's going to work, then it'll work better?
Yeah, so I think they say 30% is the therapeutic relationship for positive therapeutic outcomes. 40% is client characteristics. So again, what the client's bringing to the table, their own preferences and personality traits and characteristics. 15% is placebo, and then the last 15% is treatment. But I don't want to mislead anyone who's listening, because treatment is a gigantic part of the puzzle, right? So if the therapist doesn't have a sound education in terms of the theories and proper approaches, then the process kind of does break down a bit, right?
Sure.
Yeah, so the difference between necessary and sufficient, right? Like, so it's not, you can't have the whole pie. Like, you need treatment in there for it to be necessary and sufficient.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So it's a combination. It's not like you can take one piece of the pie out, right?
And standalone, exactly. Standalone, they're not going to be sufficient.
Yeah. No, good point.
Hold on, you lost me there.
You look confused, yeah.
Yeah, you lost me there.
Necessary and sufficient.
Yeah, okay, what are you talking about? You're talking about if the client is coming in with a problem, and the therapist has a treatment approach to that problem. How does necessary and sufficient fit into that?
So I think that an appropriate, and it might not just be one treatment. I think the last quote I heard was that there's over 250 different types of therapies.
Sure.
At this point. And so a client comes in with a presenting issue, the therapist that they're seeing is going to need to know an appropriate treatment for that concern. So that's going to be our treatment piece. And it's going to be necessary for them to know that, but it's not going to be like sufficient for them to heal just from knowing it. Like, the therapist is also going to have a good connection with that client.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like, all the puzzle pieces kind of need to fit together for it to work, but just as one piece, it's not going to all fit.
That's true. But, you know, when I read Losing the Faith by Scott Miller and Barry Duncan, I was like taken aback, because in undergrad and grad school, you're like, oh, okay, psychology fits into the medical model. Like, if you know the proper techniques and you can diagnose the right disorder, then the client should get better, right? So it was a pretty earth-shattering kind of study that was done there. The whole idea of the dodo bird verdict, right? That there's more to therapy. It's way more subjective than we once thought.
Okay, I think we're being a lot more jargony than we usually are on this podcast tonight. We're tossing around a lot of and I think that's one of the problems actually with the whole issue with clients coming to therapy, is that a lot of times as therapists, when we're describing what we do, we're using jargon that other therapists might understand, but clients don't necessarily understand. You know, we might use these terms all the time, but it doesn't really, if it doesn't connect with the client, then it's not going to help them, you know? So one of the things I'm often asked, you know, what's the best way, if you're a client, what's the best way to find a therapist, or how do you know it's going to be a good fit, or how can you test that out? And a lot of times what people will say is, you know, ask them about what degree do they have and how much training did they get, and, you know, how many years of experience they have, which again, that'll tell you something. But what I tell people to say is give a summary of what your problem is to the therapist, someone you're kind of interviewing to see if they're going to become your therapist, right? Tell them a little bit about what your problem is and ask them how they would treat it, right? So if you come into a therapist, you're interviewing a variety of therapists, say, well, you know, I've been dealing with anxiety and depression, and I'm having a hard time sleeping. I find myself a little irritable around my kids. How might you go about treating that? And then it's on the therapist to describe how they would handle that to you in language that makes sense to you, and that they can, you know, communicate clearly to you. And I think that's the best interview. That's the best audition for a therapist, because if they can't speak to you on a level that you can take in, if that doesn't really resonate with you, or if you don't understand the words they're saying, then that's probably a little bit of how the therapy is going to go, you know?
Yeah. Oh, no, for sure. So Ryan, would that happen early on? Because sometimes it takes at least a session to understand and what's going on with the individual. And
I'm actually
being
talking about like an initial phone call. If you get a
oh
therapist on
wow.
the phone and
Yeah.
say, or we have a 15-minute little consultation to see if we even want to set up that first appointment. I
Oh, I
would
see.
I would say give them a little summary of what it is you're dealing with and ask them how they might go about treating it, and see if that response makes sense to you.
Yeah.
And then you might go in and give them a session or two. I always recommend that people try out 2 or 3 therapists if they can, if they have the time and the availability. Try it, test drive a few therapists. You would test drive a few cars before buying one. You might as well test out a few therapists before investing, and see if that's see what feels like a good fit for you.
Yeah. No, makes sense.
Yeah, a lot of it's about trusting your gut. So let's say that you're already in. You found a therapist and you feel like you're communicating well and you feel like the work is going okay. How do you know if you're actually getting anywhere in therapy? How do you know that it's a good fit for you, kind of going forward? What would some signs be there?
Feedback is critical, right? So when I sit down with a client, one of the first things I try to emphasize is the importance of feedback, and that I can't do much about the way I physically look, but everything else is fair game. And I will not take that feedback personally. And if for some reason it's not the right fit, and that's okay too.
Mm-hmm.
We're fortunate. We worked at a large practice with like 19 or 20 therapists, so I'm sure we can make a referral and find someone who might be a better fit. But when you start off that way and create a space where they can speak honestly and authentically, then I find that's a great way to start off therapy.
Yeah, that's great.
I think also, if you've had a few sessions together, or you kind of feel, I don't know, as a therapist, maybe that client is not maybe not showing that they are as comfortable, or if there seems to be some barriers in terms of them communicating with you, or you might call attention to it, or just check in to see how they're doing or what their experience is. And you can, maybe say some of the things you're observing, like have it be a back and forth thing. Because I guess like Chris says with feedback, I think it's important to check in around goals and, okay, what's your hope for therapy, and how are we doing towards that, and what are the steps we're taking towards that, and how do you think you're doing, and this is what I see. And then just doing a check-in, I think, every so often, I think is a good way to
Yeah.
No, so sure. If we're speaking to potential therapy clients right now, would they be able to ask for that, do you think? Do you think they would say, hey, I'd like to give you some feedback for the session today?
No, for sure. No, I think that's key that they provide that.
Yeah.
And if the therapist takes it personally or doesn't like that, then I would say that's a bit of a red flag there,
Yeah.
And it does happen, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And that might not be easy to do for clients, right? That might be really intimidating, and I think that's understandable. But I would hope that there could be some open and honest dialogue, or for hopefully the therapist to maybe initiate and welcome any feedback, because that might be hard for a client. They might just not show up again, or they might not feel like they can be that candid for whatever reason of offending the therapist or being, whichever. But maybe the therapist could check in with that and then say, you're welcome to let me know. I'm not taking any offense to this. I'm welcoming feedback. Or if they're not comfortable talking, you could have them write it down or do a little survey that way too. There's ways about it.
Yeah, it's great. I think it's great when therapists will facilitate that sort of thing. But it's really difficult for clients. Maybe they've never been to therapy before. They don't know how it works. Or maybe they're working with a therapist who is not so forthcoming about, please give me feedback. I would say most therapists probably are not. But I think I would like us to be the voice telling those clients, it's your therapy. It's your money. It's your time. It's your investment. If you think about it, you're actually your therapist's boss.
Yes.
And if they're not performing up to your standards, then you have every right to tell them what you'd like them to do differently, or what you'd like we'd like to be addressed, or we'd like to discuss to try to change things. And if that's not happening, then you can leave. You can let them know, hey, you know what? I think I'm going to keep looking around for the therapists. Thank you.
I'm
And
curious,
I say that because there's a perceived power dynamic there of, you're the doctor or you're the therapist, you're the one who's in control, and the client feels sometimes like I can't speak up to them. They're the authority figure, but in reality, the clients run the show.
Mm-hmm.
So sorry, Chris, I stepped on you there.
I was going to say, is there sometimes it takes a little bit of time to understand how the therapist works or the techniques that they're hoping to implement, or to be able to conceptualize what's going on. So, Ryan, based on your experience, would you suggest that clients, individuals out there, to give it a session or 2 or 3 to be more before making that judgment call?
Oh, sure. I think if they, I mentioned the question before, that might just be to see if that's someone you want to sit down with. But I would say that it really takes 2 or 3 sessions before you can get a sense of how the therapy is really going to work. I mean, the first session is usually all about giving your history and kind of what
gathering
goes on,
info.
gathering information. The next one, you're kind of talking about how you're going to address the issues. And then maybe the third one, you're kind of starting to actually do the work. So if you have the time and the resources, then yeah, maybe giving a therapist 3 sessions would be ideal. I know a lot of people don't have that kind of time and money resources, but I once I was pleased that that one woman said, I am trying out therapists, and I made a list of 25 therapists, and you are number 24, and and I would like to utilize this time and see how you would work, and I'll let you know. And she let me know that I was not the chosen one out of those 25, but she cast a wide net. I respected that. That's great.
Yeah, it's very humbling when that happens, isn't it? Because it's kind of like, good, I'm glad you're asserting yourself. I had a client do that too. Because at the end, same with Joanna, reiterate, this is completely up to you, and hopefully you feel like it's a good fit, but if you don't, then that's fine. We'll find you a referral. We just want to get you the help that you need. And she said, yeah, I think I am going to ask for a referral because you feel more like a friend than a therapist.
Wow.
So I was like, sounds good. I can book you with someone else right now. Like, what do you think that would be helpful, or what else would you be looking for other than age or what it might be, right? Because we're very, very close in age. And we're able to find her a new therapist right there.
Great. That's great.
At the end of the day, we all want our clients to find someone that's a really good fit for them, right? Like, even if they're no longer our clients, we want what's best for you.
Absolutely, because part of the benefit, the joy that we get from the work is actually seeing people grow and progress. And if it doesn't feel like a good fit for them, then they might not grow and progress all that much. So I'm all for it. Let's find the right person for them, for sure. Mm-hmm. So what might be some signs that the therapy is not going so well? After the initial stages, what are some ideas that maybe this is not really working? What do you think?
What pops in my mind is, we talked about, Joanna mentioned goals, right? Like, hopefully at some point there's a discussion, come together and decide what the best goals are, and then maybe some ways to assess whether you're on the right track or not. So I think that would be an obvious one. I see therapy as, it can be challenging for some because you're kind of delving in to maybe some very personal topics, but I would hope that it's something that you enjoy going to, or you want to go to, right? Mm-hmm. If you dread therapy, then I would say that's a pretty major warning sign as well.
Sure.
But not saying like therapy is still going to be uncomfortable at times.
Yeah.
I think that's important. The discomfort's important for growth. And you sometimes symptoms, like, it's a bit of a fine line, and that's what could be really hard for clients, but sometimes your symptoms get a little worse before they get a little better.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you've been bottling them up or avoiding them, distracting yourself from them, like your emotional content, and here we are opening it up, trying to teach you containment, but when we open it up, those feelings, you might feel a little more raw or more vulnerable before you start to feel a little bit better. But I agree, if it's like sustained and there's dread, or there's a lack, if you don't feel that there's safety in the room, if you worry that you're going to be judged for what you're bringing up, then I think those would be really big markers.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, I think a lot of people worry that they're going to be judged, but if you actually find yourself being judged and, you know, try to say something about it, it still doesn't change, you're still getting judged. That's probably not great therapy. I'll throw out a couple of obvious ones. Your therapist should not try to hit on you. There should be no sexual contact. There should be none of the big red flags there. That therapy never includes sex, as they say.
They should never ask you to hang out and have a coffee. Like that is.
Yeah, any of those boundary violations are strictly against the rules. If you feel like your confidentiality is being breached at all, if anyone is, you know, if they're talking about your case, that's not going to work.
Or even over disclosure of the therapist as a strong ethical violation there, right? Like if sometimes we disclose things as therapists to enhance the therapeutic moment. There might be reasons your therapist discloses. I probably did that today, twice. I think it was in good context, but we can share them at the end if there's time. But then if they're always constantly turning it back on them, or the focus is on the therapist, or oversharing about their life, then that's a boundary violation as well.
True.
Yeah, for sure.
So these are the big ones. If the therapist asks you for a loan, if they want you to invest in their company, if they want you to, this is coercion, you know, using any sort of power dynamic there to get something from you. These are just big ethical violations that should not be taking place. And yes, Brooke, to the point of things can get worse before they get better. I like to use the analogy of therapy is kind of like cleaning out that cluttered closet that you've got, where you start taking things out and you realize, oh my gosh, my living room is now filled with stuff and it feels overwhelming. But when you start to kind of package things, organize things, get rid of some things, it all feels much more manageable. So at first, therapy can feel like, wow, there's too much here. Stick with it a little bit. If your therapist is competent, you should be able to see the progress pretty soon. I think these are all pretty good signs of when therapy isn't going so well. If you're feeling dependent, that's another one. If you feel like the therapist is making you like, oh, well, you need me in order to make it through your life, I think that's problematic.
What if it's not the therapist saying that, Ryan, and the client does get dependent on their own to a therapist?
That's so tough, right?
Yeah, because like you want, I don't know if anyone's dealt with that. For some, it's a really important person and, an outlet and a support system. And some people may not really have many positive things like that in their lives. But just anyone experience that dependency? And is that something to caution clients and be like, this is to a point where it's not okay? Or
Well, I think, there's degrees of the dependency too, right? Like I've definitely have clients that want to see me regularly, but then I let them know like, hey, you're doing really well and you probably don't have to be coming in here every week. Like, why don't we try 2 weeks from now? And there's a current client on my caseload where there's a worry that something really bad is going to happen. Like it's going to be like this Murphy's Law thing. So we have to work through that of just because we're going to move an appointment and have a week off doesn't mean something bad's going to happen. There's a therapeutic moment there, or conversation. But now we're going to do 1 week off, 2 on, 1 off. And then in the new year, go to bi-weekly, and then we'll go to a month. So we'll transition out as they get more used to not coming in. But interestingly enough, these clients for me that have the hardest time letting go tend to be the ones in the first session. They say, I don't know why I'm here. So my partner, my boss, I had a motor vehicle accident, whatever it might be. Here's the context of why I'm here, but I don't really understand therapy. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know if it's going to be helpful. And then they're the ones that don't want to leave.
It's interesting. I guess I look at it a bit differently than that. I view like dependency as being more qualitative than quantitative. You know, I think someone could be dependent on me and see me once a month, and they could be completely independent of me and see me 3 times a week for a decade. You know, I think.
Tell me more.
Yes, of course. I think dependence has more to do with am I taking responsibility for and do I have agency in my own decisions and the choices I'm making, right? And someone, I think there are a lot of clients that I've seen them for a long time, who are taking responsibility for their own choices, but they like having a place to come and process, like having a place to come and be known, and they like to make an hour for themselves during the week that feels good for them. So it's not so much about. I think that, boy, we could talk so much about this stuff. Mm-hmm. You spoke before about a medical model, and I think there's a medical model of psychology and a wellness model of psychology. And I think a medical model would be, I have a problem and I need to cure it. I need to fix it. And I will seek out therapy and I will work on this problem until my symptoms are relieved or until I reach a good enough space. And then when that's taken place, I'm done. And I think that's fine. That's what a lot of people do. You know, I'm anxious, I have a phobia, whatever it might be. Once the symptoms are gone, I'm done. And I think there's a wellness model too, which says I want to have a place to take care of myself. I want to have a place to reflect. I want to continue to grow. I want to make a good life great, right? And I think that's a place where therapy works as well. And I kind of liken that to the gym, right? So like, if you're sick, you go to the doctor and you get treatment until you're well. If you're well, but you want to get better, you go to the gym to reach your best, you know? And no one ever looks at someone who's in great shape and says, you're in great shape. Why do you keep going to the gym? Right? You've reached it. You're done, you know? Stop going to the gym. But for some reason, people think that if you're feeling better, then that means that you must end therapy. And I just don't believe that's the case.
No, I agree. But the part I would highlight there is that there is a goal. And the goal in the medical model might be reducing or eliminating panic attacks.
Sure.
But the goal in the second part, the wellness, would be self-exploration and growth. The client would still have a goal. Sure. And I think for sometimes clients continue with therapy even though they don't have a goal. And that's
comfortable, or they might they're used to doing it, or it's playing some important part. But
right. And I think that then leads to a very big therapeutic moment of, what is the purpose of coming here? What are you achieving from this? Let's explore this. Is this because it's just habit and routine? Do you want to be pushed a little further? Like there's got to be a little dialogue there between the client and the therapist on, what do you want from this? Because I need to know, right?
Yeah. I have a client who enjoys coming in weekly or bi-weekly, and I've seen him for quite a while. And I think he enjoys the space, the place to process things. But sometimes with clients, and I sense that one of our therapeutic goals is maybe them practicing that catharsis and connecting more with the people in their lives. but they're not doing so because they have this space in place to connect with me. And I think that might be holding them back from maybe enhancing their interpersonal connections with loved ones or friends and whatever it might be. So part of it, I feel, is trying to empower them to carry on, you know, some of the work that we've done therapeutically within their everyday life, because I think that would actually boost their mental health in a more significant way.
Like that.
I heard the timer.
Yes, our timer went off. That's okay. We got a couple minutes here. If you are in therapy that is not working well for you and you want to leave, I would suggest ideally that you could have a conversation, have a final session with the therapist and let them know, you know what, I've decided to move on. Here's what I've gained. Here's why I'm leaving, whatever that might be, because that might be good for you to have a clean ending. If the relationship is if it's turned toxic, if you don't feel safe disclosing things any longer, if you feel you're going to be judged or something like that, you don't have to have that last session. You could, I guess, leave a voicemail or whatever you'd like to do. That might feel like it's not a complete ending. That is completely your prerogative because, again, you're the boss. And you can leave however you'd like. If you feel like therapy has gone well and like you've reached your goals and all of that stuff, what I'd like to suggest that clients do is talk about, I think I'd like to talk about when we'd be ending therapy and like have that discussion with the therapist. It doesn't mean you have to leave that session. Maybe you leave a couple months from then. And there's this whole idea of a termination phase, which sounds maybe scary, but it's not that scary. It just means the time that from when you decide that you're going to leave to the time you actually leave, and some really amazing things can happen during that phase. I've found sometimes if you've decided, okay, we're gonna stop, we're gonna wrap up in a few months from now, we have a date set. It may bring up new feelings for you. That may bring up thoughts, feelings, dreams, fears, whatever it might be there, that because then you're processing what it's like to have an ending. And I like to say that we have far too few good endings in life. You know, most of our endings end on a sour note or with a lot of sadness or anger or something like that. And it's nice when we can have a good ending, and therapy can be one of those places where you learn to have a really good ending. You wrap things up where it's nice, everything is kind of consolidated. You have a good goodbye. You have an aftercare plan, and you go from there.
So was that the ending to our podcast? Because it was beautiful.
Well, I guess that'll be the ending to our podcast then. I don't want to spoil it with something else.
That was like a bedtime story. That's wonderful.
Morgan Freeman of podcasts right there. Okay. Well, you guys, thank you for your time. And please feel free to get into the holiday spirit. Grab yourself a ugly Christmas sweater or the ugly Christmas sweater rebellion at Amazon.com. Like and subscribe on Apple, Google, Podbean, or YouTube. Send us your questions to info@mentalhealthbootcamp.com. Visit us on Facebook or Instagram. Please tell a friend or an elf or a reindeer. And we will see you guys next week.
I think you ruined the ending. No longer the perfect ending. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.